High arches and high insteps. This is the most aesthetically pleasing feature of the foot for ballet dancers. A lot of ballet dancers wish they had feet like this. High arches and high insteps have more to do with your anatomy than anything else. You can stretch and you can strengthen, but at the end of the day, your arch and your instep is your anatomy. There's really not much you can do to change your skeleton. You can't change the bones and the bone structure of your feet. So I did a video talking about how to improve your arch and instep. This video is catered to people like me that have naturally flat feet or low insteps. I struggle with this a lot. But on that video, somebody with very high arches and high instep asked if I could make a video showing them how to deal with that. And I've been putting this video off for a very, very long time because this is not an issue I know a lot about. I struggle with the opposite issue, but I'm gonna try anyway. I'm just going to use my general anatomy knowledge to kind of give you some little tips and tricks that might help you get a more stable instep, because sometimes when you have a very high arch or a high instep, your instep almost pops forward. It's almost like it's ahead of you. So sometimes this can give dancers strains or injuries in their metatarsals. Sometimes they have trouble balancing because their foot and their leg don't feel like it's in one line underneath their body. And sometimes because you go so far over your arches, you can get something called impingement, which is when the little tendons and bones in your ankle start pinching together. So it's almost like too much pointing, and it's starting to hurt your ankle. So in my video talking about how to improve your arch and your instep, I had some little strengthening exercises in there. And strengthening is a good idea whether you have flat feet or very archy feet. I will never try to discourage people from strengthening. So the exercise that I talked about where you scrunch things with your toes and you activate all these little tiny muscles in your foot and massage the floor, pick things up with your toes, all that kind of business, you can always do that, whether you have flat feet or archy feet. If you're somebody with high arches and a high instep, this will help keep your metatarsals nice and strong. And this is an area that you have to be very careful about keeping strong, because if they're too weak and they're popping forward all the time, you can get little strains and sprains here in these little baby muscles and tendons. The one thing I would advise against is the extra stretching. You already have this mobility up here. You don't need to stretch anymore like us flat-footed people do. So I would say avoid the foot stretcher and focus more on strengthening the muscles that bring your foot back. So things that feel more like flexing is a good thing that you can do in your spare time to keep this part nice and strong and tight instead of letting it get too loose and risking injury when your foot is doing that overarching movement. So if you have like a TheraBand or a FlexiBand, anything that's elasticy and kind of, tough to pull on, like kind of tight and has resistance, you might need a buddy to do this or just a solid object that you can tie the TheraBand around. So I'm gonna try to find something on this side of my room to tie the TheraBand around. Okay, so all I've done was tied a TheraBand around this box that's in my room. It might make more sense to have somebody sit across from you and do the same thing, but I'm just working with what I have. You could probably tie this around a chair or something, or like the leg of a table. So you're going to put this around your foot and back up, so it should almost feel like the TheraBand is pulling your foot to point. And you're actually going to do the opposite. I want you to keep flexing. You're going to flex really hard, and you're going to feel some soreness in the front of your shin and the top of your foot, and that's actually good. Those are the things that we want to strengthen on you, because if you're too loose right here, it's easier for your arch to kind of like pop over your shoe or run away from you. The front and the top is where everything gets weak on people with high arches and high insteps. Anywhere that you can kind of set up this little resistance band, this is a great exercise to help keep you strong here. Another little thing you could do is if you have something small like a water bottle or even just a little cushion or something that you can put under your foot and be in kind of like this weird middle low demi point. So you're not on a high full demi point and you're not all the way flat either. You're somewhere in the middle. So Put something just under your heel so that you're in like a middle, and practice just balancing. Practice, just little movements like your other leg going around you. Practice little things that you would do at the bar. And you might actually feel kind of wobbly here because you're so used to just kind of like popping your whole instep forward, and that kind of feels comfortable for you, but that's also kind of like a weak spot when you're all the way forward. So if you practice down here, in like a lower demi point, you're actually going to strengthen all of this stuff as well. And it is going to feel a little uncomfortable and a little wobbly, but I think this will also help you later. So remember, you're kind of back a little bit. You're not all the way up on your high demi point, okay? A little bit back. You're going to feel all these little like wobbly things happening, but that's good. I want these to get stronger on you. Now, if you find that you have trouble balancing because it feels like your instep and your foot is like farther ahead of you than the rest of your leg is, or if you're in point shoes and it feels like your instep is running away from you, there are a couple little tricks you can do for that too. In your slippers, you can find padding and try playing around with it by putting it like under your toes or under the ball of your foot. And like just play around with it, because sometimes having a little bit of cushion on the bottom of your foot can help keep you straight up and down rather than this whole thing going forward. So sometimes just like having a little spot for the bottom of your foot to like cushion and nestle in, it can help make it just a little easier for your leg to stay straight, and your instep won't be so inclined to like pop forward, because usually the more flexion that you have down where your toes are, that's where you're more inclined to go and overarch your foot. So sometimes just a little bit of padding, like kind of under where your metatarsals, would be just enough to kind of hold you back a little bit so that your foot and your leg is more of a straight line rather than like a curvy line. And then with your point shoes, I have seen dancers actually sew some elastic on the top over their instep, over their metatarsals. Now, usually the whole point of having elastic on your point shoe is to keep the heel on. Elastic is what keeps the heel from slipping off your foot. So if you only have one piece of elastic on your shoe total, just the one piece across here, that's not going to help. If you're going to have just one piece of elastic on your shoe, it should be to keep the heel on. But I have seen dancers sew an extra little elastic on the front right here. And I think they do that because it just helps them feel like their instep is secure. It's in the shoe. It's not going to like pop out of the shoe. Their shoe isn't going to like buckle underneath them. Their instep isn't just going to like come out of their shoe. I think sewing a little bit of extra elastic can be good at giving you more support. It's just like a little safety net to help keep your foot from arching out over your shoes. And one last little thing, if you have a high arch and a high instep, try not to wing too much when you're on releve. I made a whole YouTube video talking about winging. Winging is when you kind of pitch your weight over your big toe instead of being just in the middle. Winging is the opposite of sickling. Sickling is when you're out here on your pinky toes. So if you have a high arch and a high instep, I want to say focus more on staying just in the middle. Don't do so much winging, because you already have so much happening in your whole ankle right here. You already have so much pinching. If you pitch your weight onto your big toe, that's going to happen even more. And that's where that thing called impingement starts happening, where you start pinching all these little tendons and bones and stuff in here, and it can actually be really painful. And I had a similar problem with one of my tendons, and that's why I wound up having to get surgery. So that's no fun. So if you have a high instep, focus more on just having correct linear placement. If you want to go watch my releve video, that can help you figure out how to just get a nice linear releve. So don't focus too much on winging, okay? I know you have beautiful feet and you want to show them off with your winging, but try not to do it unless that foot is in the air. Wing all you want when you're in the air, but be very careful about winging when you're actually dancing on it. Okay, so I hope that all helped. Just remember, lots of strengthening, and lots of strengthening the muscles that flex your foot. Don't overstretch. If you have high arches and high insteps, you don't need any more flexibility in that part of your foot if it's already going very far forward. So focus on strengthening the little in-between muscles so that you're not weak when you go up in releve.